It's 1:30. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting, this meeting of the Transportation Authority to order. Madam Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Good afternoon, directors. Director Carr? Frost? Here. Gatewood? Here. Guetta? Here. Hanson? Harris? Here. Howell?
Here.
Hume?
Here.
Kennedy? Here. Miller?
Here.
Natoli?
Here.
Peters? Here. Santu?
Here.
Chenier? Here. Cerna?
Here.
And Swin.
Here. Thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Natoli, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
All right. Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the cable statement?
This meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will replay Saturday, February 29th at 4 p.m. and Monday, March 2nd at 9 a.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may sign up using the speaker cards located in the back of the room. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record.
Thank you very much. Okay. For item 1, we have comments on not on the agenda from the public. I have one speaker signed up to speak at this time, Jeffrey Tartagia. If anyone else would like to speak, please turn in the speaker slip now. Thank you. Hi, Jeffrey.
Well, board, I hopefully will go back to another meeting, but we'll see what you guys come up with and do. Yesterday was the state on mobility options and privacy. Enlightening, interesting to see the constant bit of information that at the state capitol keeps flowing and some of the amazing decisions. But to this body, I'm going to emphasize to you, make it simple. Right now, you've got for the Los Rios where they did simply 2 flyers out there. One announcing what their needs were, and one was what their objective of wanting bond measures for. You've got so many projects in through here, I do not know how you're going to make it a simple sheet. But if you get to the point of getting a, should we say, initiative, make it simple. Like I said, suggested, this is a transportation tax, for Sacramento. It's that simple. It seems like you make it so complicated. That's my public comment.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That's all I have for this item. Next item, number 2, Executive Director's Report. Mr. Kempton.
Mr. Chair and members, I can be very brief.
Mike.
Microphone.
You have to lean in.
It is on?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Is that better? All right. Sorry. 2 items on the Executive Director's Report. First of all, the City of Rancho Cordova is submitting an application for a federal infra grant for a 4-lane project improving White Rock Road and asked for a letter of support from the authority for that grant after determining that this was the only grant request for the infra program in our from entities in our agency. We did submit a letter of support, as that is consistent with our policies and principles relative to encouraging the leveraging of additional state and federal dollars. Also, we've been successful in getting all of our council and board of supervisor presentations set in the event that we move forward with the Measure A 2020 expenditure plan. The tentative schedule begins with the City of Sacramento on Tuesday, March 24th, and ends with the City of Ileton on Tuesday, April 20th, with a number of the meetings scheduled between those dates. So that completes my Executive Director's Report for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kempton. Hope that is a good foreshadowing. Item 3, we have consent items. I have a consent item in front of me, action summary for February 13th, 2020 STA Governing Board meeting. Okay, I have a motion from Director Harris, seconded from Director Howell. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, Director Kempton, you're back up. Oh, sorry, yep, Director Peters?
Yeah, it's for you, Will. On item 2 with the tentative schedule, you've got all the jurisdictions, but you don't have the final vote to put it on the ballot. Have you not scheduled that yet? It isn't listed here anyway.
Madam, excuse me, habit with Madam Chair. Director Peters, the vote to place this on the ballot will not occur until the August timeframe. This is the...
But I understand when it has to be on, but it's not on this schedule, so I just wondered whether you have reserved time from the clerk at the county.
I have not,
Okay.
but I will.
I believe July 28th is our last meeting before the deadline. So if you want to give yourself a week's playtime, you might want to look at 2 dates there.
Thank you for that, and I will do so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item up is, Madam Clerk, do we have the item up on the, here we go. Thank you. The next item up is the status of the development of the proposed Measure A 2020 Ordinance and Transportation Expenditure Plan. This is the 5th in a series of meetings where the board has met to take public input and to hear comments from stakeholders and members of the public relative to a proposed ordinance and expenditure plan for a potential ballot measure to be placed on the November ballot. I want to begin today by starting where we left off at our last meeting. If you look at the proposed Measure A Transportation Expenditure Plan, you'll remember that this was where we received consensus for the 60-40 split of the programmable dollars. This has been converted back to sales tax revenues only. And you can see the percentages there for the major categories and subcategories included in the expenditure plan. Some of the revisions to the draft ordinance and TEP since our last meeting, and these changes have been iterative and ongoing. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't get a call or a contact from someone regarding either an error in the language or a correction that needs to be made or a suggestion as to how the language can be approved. We have added high priority projects by jurisdiction for the local projects of regional significance. That information was submitted by all of the local jurisdictions. We have added revised language reflecting agreement among all parties for the description of senior and disabled transportation services and the distribution of revenues for that purpose. And we have included word, phrase, description changes throughout the ordinance and the TEP, as I said, based on stakeholder and public input. That process is expected to continue all the way through the end of this process that we've been engaged in. I do want to talk about a proposed revenue estimate adjustment. When I was first appointed and took over as the executive director, I wanted to take a look at the revenue estimates because the initial plan was that was presented in December is based on extremely conservative estimates, and that's not bad. I think we've had some experience with expenditure plans for transportation sales tax measures in the county that tell us we do need to be conservative, and so that's where we want to stay, of course. We are currently, or at least in the initial plan that was presented in December, we were using a 2.29% year-over-year growth rate, which resulted in a revenue estimate of $8.170 billion. I don't want to get into a lot of detail here, but we reviewed those projections. We had discussions with financial advisors, and we concluded that additional revenue was available while still maintaining a conservative outlook for the program period. So we have proposed using a 2.4% year-over-year growth rate, which is an increase of just over 0.1%, but it does result in $200 million in additional revenue, which would give us a total estimate for the program period of $8.37 billion. We have also given the expressions of concerns and input from folks relative to some of the programs that weren't included in the program with a smaller amount of revenue. We have proposed an application of additional revenue, as you see here. $63 million for the American River Parkway, for which there was no money under the previous program. We have increased money for the air quality programs with an additional allocation of $50 million for the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District. We've added $51 million for local streets and roads, which will go to the cities and the county. And we have added $34 million for transit maintenance and operations to go to SAC-RT. As always, with every amount of money that comes into the program, 1% has to be set aside for program administration. In this instance, that would be $2 million. Just to go over the local projects of regional significance in terms of the money that has been set aside in this proposal, we asked the public works directors to come up with a formula for the distribution of the money in this particular category. And if you remember, it's a total of $700 million. They came up, and I suppose being engineers, came up with a complicated formula involving population, lane miles, and sales tax revenue generation. But if you go through the formula, it looks like a fair and reasonable way to divide up the revenues. That's the percentages that you see here, along with the dollar amounts that would be available to each of the 8 jurisdictions within this program on the far right side. And here is a combination of the both local projects of regional significance combined with the local street road repair and transformative system improvements, which are in the local streets and roads piece of this. And it provides you a total of the amount of money that's going to local jurisdictions for streets and roads on the far right, totaling $3.875, well, almost $76 billion. And then this represents the revised Measure A Transportation Expenditure Plan after those changes that we just discussed have been made, and with the additional revenue added. You can see that the total has increased to $8.370 billion with the concomitant breakdown by category and subcategory. And in addition, at the bottom, the streets, roads, and highways piece of the program remains at 60%, or $4.826 billion. The amount going to transit and rail is at 40%, or $3.2 billion. Mr. Chairman, that completes my presentation, other than to say that the changes that you've seen, and barring any additional input from the public and stakeholders, this is probably the breakdown of the programmatic expenditure plan that you will see going forward. We are still working with the public and stakeholders on ordinance and transportation expenditure plan language. We have issues to address relative to the definition of complete streets. We're looking at the potential for an advanced mitigation program, health and safety language, some transit and rail planning language that has been suggested. There are a variety of other more minor suggestions that have been made, and we'll continue to work with those stakeholders and the public to incorporate the appropriate language as we move closer to our March 12th date for tentative adoption of the Transportation Expenditure Plan. And that does complete my report.
Thank you very much, Will, and appreciate all your work and your staff's work on this. A lot of numbers going around, as well as a lot of details in the ordinance that you're still working through, as you articulated. I'm going to briefly bring it back to the dais here for any questions, maybe brief comments, but I really want to give it an opportunity because there's a lot of folks who signed up to speak as well. Director Cerna.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank you too, Will, for your help and that of our consulting team and our staff on getting us to this point. And I specifically want to express my gratitude for working with my office over the since the last time we met. And I think you heard not just from me, but others on this dais about our interest in ensuring that the American River Parkway, as a very legitimate, very real part of our active transportation network from across the county, has not just kind of the status quo consideration, meaning what we had with the first measure, but actually we take this opportunity to do something even greater with regard to its import and the appropriation of resources for that. So I just want to make mention of that at the outset. I too, like the chair, want to certainly hear from everyone that's taken time this afternoon to come out and provide their testimony. But the fact that I consider you going over and above, especially on that particular asset, I just want to make sure you know that this member really appreciates your focus on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hansen.
Sorry, my mic and lectern aren't working, so it's because Mr. Natoli is marked as a chair, so he can't have two people on this one. Will, I wanted to follow up on a couple things. I actually spoke to, I think it was yesterday. Things have changed since then, it looks like. The changes for particularly like the Parkway, I was asking Supervisor Cerna, Director Cerna, but is that still just the Nexus resources, or is that tax measure resources? Because I was concerned for all the things that are relying on the Nexus study, that those fees come and go, but the Parkway in particular needs consistent funding. So will you explain where the source of those funds are from?
These are sales tax revenues. So this is not something that would require a Nexus study. On your approval of an expenditure plan, this would be incorporated within the expenditure plan for allocation of funds from the sales tax revenues.
Okay, that's good. On the policy side, which is where we talked a lot yesterday, I was trying to fix this lectern, so I might have missed it. Sorry, but did you end up making any changes to some of the policies that we talked about yesterday?
I can't remember if we made changes to some of those specific policies. We have made changes based on input that we've gotten from stakeholders and others. And then some of the things that I know we did talk about are, as I mentioned to you, we're going to be discussing with the Public Works directors on Monday.
Yep.
And I think there are a number of suggestions made by the Sacramento or the Smart Sac Moves folks that we can take a look at and potentially suggest language for your consideration at the March 12th meeting, which would incorporate some of those ideas. And so the dialogue continues.
I think, to be specific, I think the air quality conformity language still needs work. I don't know to the extent that SACOG consulting with the district can help us have robust language here to make sure that we protect our attainment and the maintenance of all our state and federal funds related to air quality conformity. And then the consistency with the SCS, those are two big ones. I think those are kind of measured by VMT to some extent, and the Office of Planning and Research at the state has a very robust tool there. And then Supervisor Cerna, as Air Quality Board member, probably knows more about this, but the most recent version of the California Emissions Factor, which is the Air Resources Board tool for measuring criteria pollutants and other greenhouse gas emissions. Those are kind of the things that I'm thinking of around policy, how we really can assess the value of these policies. And then finally, I still am concerned that one of the top priorities for voters was leverage and matching funds. And so maybe we'll hear more from the public and the board later, but really about making sure that we have really strong requirements for matching in here, that local funds should only be a portion and less than 50% of a project's overall budget
for the significant capital projects, but most of those projects are applying for state and federal programs that usually it's 10 to 20% local share. But I want to just make sure that if the voters, and one of their top priorities, as our polling has showed, is leveraging of funds, that we're actually meeting that criteria, and we're not just fully funding very large projects with sales tax dollars when we have access to SB1 or federal transportation and transit monies.
And we do have an aspirational goal in the expenditure plan of 1/3 of the project cost being achieved through match. That's not required except for the interchange projects, where those are typically supported by developer and private funding, and that there is a requirement in the expenditure plan for a 1/3 match for those projects. But we'll be looking at those. I have a meeting tomorrow with SACOG, so we'll be having some additional discussions on some of the points you've raised.
Thank you, Will. And maybe we can turn our aspirational goal into a perspirational goal and apply that to all the significant projects. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Director Schneer.
Thank you. Steve kind of mentioned this, so I just want to tag on when we talk about the federal air quality requirements, we talk about the MTP. I think we should also be talking about the SCS, Sustainable Community Strategy, so I'd like to see that aligned in the language. And then I would support Mr. Hansen on the discussions that we're going to need to have on some of these other issues. Could you talk, Will, maybe just a little bit about process? And I don't know, Chair, if this is the right time, but from here to the next meeting, and because
if you don't mind, Dr. Schneer, I'd like to hear from the public, and then we'll bring it back to the process.
Sure.
Thanks.
Just to key it up is kind of, you're going to have things from members of this board. Are we going to be voting on those on the 12th, or how does all that happen?
Good question. Thank you. Director Gatewood.
First, good job, Will.
Thank you.
You know, a lot of cats in the room. So what I want to make sure, since we're pretty set on the percentages, about 60-40, and the money that's going to, I know we're probably going to talk about this in the committee if we have another committee meeting, but they were saying that it's easier, since if we had, instead of a percentage, since we got the percentage, hard money pulled out, that's like a guarantee, it's easier for them to go for federal dollars against the money when it first comes out. So the 23%, instead of having it be 23%, it would be like for rail, it's easier for them if we were to say, since they're going to get about $464 million a year out of the overall plan, it's easier if they would just be guaranteed $230 million right off the top, and then the rest falls into the percentage. So maybe we can talk about how the best way to leverage the money for, like, especially for rail, maybe we can do a pull out or call it out and say $230 million right now, and then the percentage is going to come after that, just to make sure, because it helps them to stretch their overall federal dollars, and it helps them to bond against it, especially for the cities, if the money's guaranteed instead of on a percentage that could move.
We would have to consider that, Director Gatewood, in the context of a program that the escalated estimates of revenues are $8.37 billion, with about $130 million coming in the first year. That gets escalated over the 40 years of the program. In the 40th year, you're looking at a little over $300 million coming in a year. So any set aside of the magnitude that you're talking about would have to capture a significant portion of the early years of the program. Some of those dollars, as you know, are restricted with respect to streets and roads and maintenance for transit. Right. So I'm happy to take a look at how we might be able to accommodate something along those lines, but I think it's going to be a tough ask.
Okay. It was just when I was talking to the rail, Henry and them, they said that was the best way to leverage the dollars. And since this is one of our big things we can actually get federal dollars for, I mean, the better, the more money we can get from the federal government and other bonding and impact for our cities is what we really want to go for.
There are bonding provisions built into the expenditure plan and ordinance. However, bonding has a cost, as you well know, I'm sure, as a city official, and we would have to we would have to be very careful, I think, in terms of how much we chose to bring up front, because you'd have to take the debt service out of some other category of the program in order to be able to bond for a significant amount of money.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Will. We'll come back to you in a minute. I want to go to our speakers now. I've got, last count, about 30 speakers signed up, so I'm going to take the liberty and we're going to give 2 minutes for everybody to speak. And my first speaker is Jeffrey Tartagia. You're second bite at the apple here, Jeffrey. And then next speaker is Wayne Lewis.
Board, as I look at this, right now I am spending part of my time in the master plan on aging. And you only show 3%, and for the time period of everything else, you say that's going for dealing with the disability and the senior community. The senior community is right now existing at about 5 million and is expected every 10 years to more than double. And this is all that you're setting aside. I just bring that up to your attention is where and when you need to recognize that you are having an overwhelming number of seniors, and you do not seem, it's had not in the past been adequate to deal with seniors in resourcing their transportation needs. I bring it particularly to the South area as well as to some other areas about meeting transportation needs. I just alert you that, you're doing this. Please make sure you understand what you are doing on this measure. And again, let's get it. I do want a transportation tax going here. Please, Sacramento, we need it desperately.
Thank you. Thank you for championing our seniors as well. Mr. Lewis, and then followed by Leah Barrett.
Good afternoon, Chair Soon and members of the board. I'm Wayne Lewis, representing Caltrans. First, I'd like to thank all of you for the years-long effort that has gotten us to this point where we have a solid expenditure plan that I think the public can approve. Caltrans supports the expenditure plan as presented. Like everybody else, all the other stakeholders, we would have liked to have had more. We have hundreds of thousands of people using the freeway system in Sacramento every day, and they experience far too much congestion, but the amount designated for us in this expenditure plan will give us a good start on solving some of the most congested bottlenecks on Cap City Freeway and 5 to the airport.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your input and presence today. Hi, Leah.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Leah Bear, and I'm the Deputy Director of the 50 Corridor Transportation Management Association. As you may recall, at the last meeting, I requested a 0.1% funding allocation for the Regional Transportation Management Associations. I'm here today to renew that call to action. In the face of unprecedented population and climate challenges in the next 40 years, we're tackling problems that require multifaceted solutions on a number of fronts. Transportation, like most other industries, is driven by supply and demand. Historically, transportation funding has been used to manage the supply side, like roads and public transportation, which is great and definitely needed. But I'm here to remind you that we also have access to the demand side. This access is through your regional transportation management associations. Our organizations were created by regional leaders, much like yourselves, for the purpose of gaining access to residents, large employers, and commuters to manage the transportation demand. I firmly believe that this funding will have a larger impact over the next 40 years if we use a small portion of it to manage demand as well as supply. So I urge you to use us and invest in us, because that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Vice Chair Natoli, you have a second? Yeah.
Just a question for staff on that. This has come up before. I know I asked about it the last time around. You did some revenue projections that actually enhanced the amount that was projected. Again, I don't know whether in the committee structure, Will, or in your review, or what's any conversation, but there was nothing in your report back about this request and how we might address it. Maybe you're going to do it for later, or you left it for this board to tug and pull on it up here. But I'm curious, because I see nothing in the report that talks about either it was discounted, it was considered, and you did some revenue projections. I assume for the amount being offered here, those revenue projections could have included some for TMAs if that was a staff viewpoint and or a committee viewpoint. So I guess I'm curious where we stand with this request.
This issue was actually brought up to the ad hoc committee, the conclusion was, with all of the other demands, that with the limited amount of additional revenues, that the dollar allocation that you saw on the screen today was more in keeping with that committee's approach, and obviously you will have an opportunity to approve that on March 12th. Okay. But I did actually include local transportation management agencies as eligible project expenses under the transformative system improvements approach, so that if a local jurisdiction did want to put some money into a local transportation management agency, they could. But there was no additional money out of the limited sales tax revenues for that purpose. We're going to have continuing discussions with the TMAs. I want to have a conversation with SACOG and see what options might be out there.
If I just offer one thing for consideration as we talk about this, again, I'm not a part of the ad hoc committee, so I'm not privy to direct conversations, but it would seem to me that as you look at administration, because there's a certain part of the TMAs that requires the coordination administration beyond what services may be provided. I'm just curious, as we allow, as you said, under the ordinance, the 1% for administration, STA, and any ancillary consulting and or other work that goes on. It would seem to me that might be a fit for at least a portion of the request. So I just offer that as a thought as you're going to take this up over the next couple of weeks. Thanks.
Okay. Next speaker, we have Colin Jackson Jr., followed by Steve Cohn. Colin Jackson Jr., or did I say it wrong? Colenn. Glenn? Is it Glenn? Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't look like a Glenn to me. Sorry. Yep, Glenn. Glenn Jackson Jr. Nice to see you again, young man.
Hello, my name is Glenn Jackson Jr., and I wanted to share with the board my walk score for my neighborhood in North Natomas. It's 44 out of 100, which means most errands require a car. My bikeable score is 62 out of 100, which means that there are some bike lanes, but not where they're needed. My transit score is 13 out of 100, which means the nearest bus stop is over a mile away. With this plan, I would like to see more pedestrian hybrid beacons, especially in routes to and from school, to improve safety and the walk score for all neighborhoods. With this plan, I would like to see protected and connected bikeways that are wide and visible for all types of bicyclists. With this plan, I would like to see public transportation in my neighborhood frequent and easily accessible throughout Sacramento. Last week, I had the honor of meeting and speaking with David Mineta, the son of Norman Mineta, who is a former U.S. Secretary of Transportation. I also had the honor of meeting with Mr. David Kim, who's California's Secretary of Transportation. I am not a transportation expert or a transportation professional, but I am a 12-year-old advocate who's here to provide perspectives and considerations. I ask the board, will you meet the needs of pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit riders? Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. If you're not an expert yet, you're on your way to being one.
Future Transportation Secretary.
Yep. Next up, Steve Cohn. Good to see you, Steve. And after that, Roger Dickinson.
Thank you. Glenn will be in his early 50s by the time we build out this system that we're talking about funding. So let's keep that in mind. I'm going to put up a chart that you have in the back of the comments that look better online. But let me just point out that are we able to expand that a little bit? Okay, I'll just go on. We're trying to...
Mr. Cohn, I would say that the board has that attachment to the letter that was provided to them prior to the meeting.
Thank you. I just want to point out that your existing Measure A was 43.35% for transit. So we're backsliding here with the 40. And not only that, but 9% was for bus and carpool lanes. So really over 50% if you combine the bus and carpool lanes. We understand that the board appears set with the 60-40, so we really want to make sure you understand it's going to be a tough push to get the public to support that when we're actually putting less money into transit than we did 15 years ago when we passed the initial renewal of Measure A. So we're imploring you to not miss the opportunity to ensure that other portions of this plan include ways to reduce vehicle mile travel, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We provided very detailed language in the ordinance, which you have electronically attached to the letter that we emailed yesterday. We'll continue to work with staff, but we want to emphasize how important it is to make sure that this is forward-thinking for the next 40 years and takes into account the need to address climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Roger Dickinson, followed by Tony Lee. Hi, Roger.
Mr. Chair and members, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just want to offer a couple thoughts for you today as you consider this and go forward. The first is to think beyond your jurisdictional boundaries. We have people who want to get to work from Del Paso Heights to Rancho Cordova. Ask yourselves whether this plan, when it's implemented, will make that feasible and reasonable. We have people who want to go from Elk Grove to Natomas and vice versa. Will this plan make that feasible and reasonable? You need to ask yourselves that in every respect, in every case, because frankly, citizens don't care where the artificial political boundaries are. They care where they need to go and want to go and how they're going to get there, what it's going to require. If the rural roads are in a state of perpetual deterioration, they're not going to blame just Mr. Natoli or whoever, assuming there is a successor to him, whoever comes after him. They're going to blame all of us for failing to address that very real need, while some jurisdictions have a much better time of it. Secondly, I encourage you to think, as Mr. Cohn did, about those policies that will be so important in the future, such as making sure that we are reducing VMT, that we have an advanced mitigation program, that we include complete streets in a meaningful way, because the failure to do so not only will hurt us with the voters, but it will put us in a position in the future where this policy and this plan are at risk from the state government, the federal government, the courts. And we won't determine our future. They will. We don't want to be in that place. Let's determine our own future. Let's make sure that this plan has the policies and the process necessary to ensure that we determine that future. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. Thank you, Roger. Mr. Tony Lee, followed by Samuel Murray.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Board of Directors, for taking on this important issue and all of the work that you've done. I especially want to thank Director Hansen for his comments earlier regarding Smart Moves and Smart and SAC Moves comments. I'm a transportation planner. I'm new to Sacramento. One of the reasons that I chose to live in Midtown Sacramento is because of all the transit that's available in the complete streets and the bike lanes. But as the two previous speakers just said, one of the things that I second wholeheartedly is that regardless of the municipality or the community that we all live in, that connectivity is so important. And whether it's in Midtown or Folsom or Galt or any other place, these programs are sorely needed. So, and I fully support as much as we can have to go towards the transit and the pedestrian safety and the bike safety issues. So thank you again.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Next up, Samuel Murray, followed by Diane Osorio.
Hello, my name is Samuel Murray, and I am 13 years old. And last Friday, I went on a field trip with my entire junior high school group around Sacramento on public transit. And we stopped at 7 different locations, including Sac City College, Sac State College, Sacramento Zoo, and many other places. However, we also noticed that there were no consistent sidewalks, there was no safe bike lanes, and we also had to be driven 4 miles to the starting bus stop of the trip because there was no bus stops or a safe way to get to school, because there's no safe way to get to school from there. I call for more funding to public transit, trains, and buses because it's going to give, and it's going to give more independence to people, adolescents, young adults, and without having to rely on people like their parents all the time to get them around safely. And it also has taken a toll on parents who have to take time out of their work, and especially ones who have to work minimum wage jobs to basically maintain a living and have to be there at their minimum wage job 24/7. What I am saying is this would make this would make the lives of so many people much easier. And one of the most common arguments is that for people who want to reduce funding to public transit is nobody takes public transit. More people would take it if it was funded more enough. And in reality, there are a whole lot more people that take public transit. That is why I call for more public transit and more sidewalks, more safe bike lanes, and more funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Samuel, we got
Samuel. Good job.
Hi, Diane.
Hello. My name is Diane Osorio. I'm the Motherlode Chapter Director of the Sierra Club. Here once again, as you've heard, I don't think I have to repeat myself. We're not going away. We have activated our members. We culled only 13% of our members in this county, and we have so far 300 petitions. We are urging you to do the right thing. We're asking you for say rights to school, to work. Those are things that no matter what political preference you have, there are studies that show the economic implications of having a good public transit system, of investing in our current communities and growing up and instead of growing out. So we're still here. We're going to continue to be here until the last day. And thank you, everyone, for your support.
I'm glad you are. Thank you. Jeremiah Roan, followed by Chris Holm.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Rohr. Live in Sacramento. I'm a citizen cyclist. Years ago, there was a great movie called that talked about "Build it and they will come," right? The Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. For the past 40 or 50 years, we've been building highways, and guess what? Cars have come, and cars continue to come as we build more and more highways. We're under the fallacy that we add more lanes to reduce congestion, and that's absolutely incorrect in its thinking. As you add more lanes, all you get is more congestion. We have to think about different ways of doing this. The present tax right now started when I was young, and this tax right now will be around when this young man is older. We need to think about what's going to happen in the next 40 years. And again, we have to think about if we build it, they will come in transit, in bike lanes, in public transportation, in safe routes to school, and that kind of stuff. 5 years ago, we never would have thought that the city would be kind of full of electric bikes and scooters. What are we going to do in the next 5 years when even more things get electrified and smaller and littler things get moving around? The car is not the solution. The car is the problem. So funding highways, my extreme view is that we've got the percentage backwards. It should be 60-40 for transit and that kind of stuff. This is absolutely the wrong way to go. We need to think about building it. You build transit, you build safe bike trails and sidewalks, people will come, people will use it. But we have to build it for them to use. And we have to think about what our world is going to look like in the next 30 or 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Chris Holm, followed by Russell Henley. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Holm. I'm with Walk Sacramento and the Sac Moves Coalition. We need to be able to get around everywhere. Every one of us needs to be able to get wherever we want to go in the county safely, conveniently, and comfortably. Complete Streets is not only the street that provides safe, convenient, and comfortable travel for all users, but a policy, planning, and design approach that ensures streets are improved, reconstructed, and constructed to safely meet the needs of all users. The Complete Streets policy we have proposed for the 2020 Measure A TEP would ensure that everyone traveling in Sacramento County, whether in unincorporated areas, any of the cities, or in between, would have safe, comfortable, and convenient streets for their journey using the mode they choose. Our Complete Streets policy would require most local projects that, 1, reasonably safe travel along and across the way is provided. Bicycle, pedestrian, or active transportation advisory committees review and comment on the projects. And 3rd, planning and design of projects shall be consistent with local bicycle, pedestrian, transit, multimodal, and other relevant plans. There are exceptions to the Complete Streets policy, including their specific users are prohibited, cost would be disproportionate to the need or probable use, and accommodation is not needed based on objective factors such as low use due to land use or conflicts between modes. Our vision for bicycle and pedestrian safety, improved air quality, and reduced congestion will only be achieved if Complete Streets principles are systematically integrated into all road projects whenever feasible. To improve safety, options for mobility and access, economic opportunities and success, and for better public health, we ask you to support the plan proposed by the SMART and SAC Moves coalitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell Henley, followed by Jacqueline Dewar.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, authority members. My name is Russell Henley. I've been a Midtown Sacramento resident for 28 years and a bicycle commuter for 3rd grade. I'm a regular user of public transit, including for travel to outlying parts of the area, such as Rancho Cordova for shopping and recreational activities. I also do sometimes drive a car, by the way. I'm a member of the SMART SAC Moves Coalition, and I support their recommendations, in particular their original call that greater than 50% of the funds go for transit, bicycles, and pedestrians, including complete streets and safe routes to school. The 60-40 split of the current STA proposal is inadequate for transportation, or transit, bicycles, and pedestrians, given in particular our failure to meet air quality standards in this region and the need to address climate change. I want to emphasize in particular for my City of Sacramento representatives on this body that the current STA proposal does not appear to meet the standards that were established in the city's December 2019 resolution regarding transportation expenditures. And further, it also seems to fall short of the recommendations that are coming from the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change. This tax measure will be in place for 40 years, as a number of folks have emphasized. I'll probably be dead by then. But still, it's critical that it look forward to a public transit, a bicycle and pedestrian future that will come with clean air and mitigated climate change, and that we not look backward towards an auto-centric past that results in high pollution levels and continues to contribute to climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jacqueline Dewar, followed by Patrick Gill.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm a resident of the city of Sacramento, and every day I'm a pedestrian. Most days I'm a cyclist. Occasionally, I get to ride public transit, although my neighborhood isn't as well served by public transit as I would very much like it to be. And I am occasionally an auto driver, and I'm getting into that age group where you're not going to want me driving on the streets if we want to get to Vision Zero. I'm also a volunteer in several public health efforts, one of which is to put and keep public health at the front of our thinking in city and community design and planning decisions. So what do we know about public health perspectives on public and active transportation investments? If we are serious about safety and reducing injuries and deaths, that is getting to Vision Zero, your board will vote for a robust and smart guided investment in public transit and active transportation infrastructure. If we're serious about reducing the health epidemics of obesity and the chronic diseases that we're increasingly burdened with, especially diabetes, which really is taxing not only our healthcare system, but our very economy. We're moving toward 20% GDP that healthcare is taking of our productivity. You again will vote for a robust investment in public and active transportation. If you're serious about reducing congestion, which by the way has a direct contribution to hypertension, overweight, and some other chronic diseases in addition to increasing overall vehicle emissions, you again will vote to support a robust investment. If you're serious about housing and housing insecurity, I pulled a census tract in Citrus Heights to look at the costs that those households bore from transportation and housing. And there's general agreement that when your household budget goes over 50% for housing and transportation, you are at risk for housing insecurity and homelessness, because you're in fact just one pay cut, one layoff, one job loss, one benefit reduction, one illness, or other family catastrophe away from not being able to make your rent or mortgage.
Jacqueline, I need to ask you to wrap it up,
Thank
please.
you. So I ask for your full and robust allocation of the resources that we have available in this region to public and active transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Guild, followed by Glenda Marsh.
Good afternoon, Patrick Guild with Breathe California, Sacramento region. As an organization that focuses on regional lung health, Breathe California would like to see in our region a robust public transit network and safe, active transportation options. The health and quality of life of all of the region's residents is adversely affected by air pollutants from combustion engines. As outlined in our proposed ordinance and TEP, we believe that all fix-it first efforts should include complete streets improvements whenever feasible to create streets and sidewalks that are safe for children, seniors, and disabled who all rely on them daily to go about their lives. Safe and sustainable transportation options lead to clean air and healthy lungs and can only exist when residents are able to confidently and comfortably exercise their options to walk, bike, roll, or use public transportation safely and reliably. In the coming years, state and federally mandated health-based air quality standards will need to be met. Additionally, greenhouse gas emissions will need to be reduced per state law. All transportation and land use plans must consider vehicle miles traveled per SB 743, and decisions made today will have significant impact on the lung health of our region's residents for many years to come. When residents know that they can safely walk or ride their bike, or that they can reliably and efficiently use public transit to get around, we will then begin to see the necessary reductions in VMT, improvements in air quality and lung health, and the increased access for all people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Glenda Marsh, followed by Allison McLeod.
Thank you, board members. Glenda Marsh with Sacramento Metro Advocates for Rail and Transit. So at this juncture, we are very interested in continuing to work with the board and staff on the very valuable policy items, policy language that we would like to see incorporated. Our coalition's vision is that most Sacramento County residents will be within a transit ride, a bike, or a walk to most everything they need. And in order to get there, we need you as the elected officials who represent voters to require or to give direction to local jurisdictions to achieve those goals sooner rather than later. I am sure that most people would agree with me. I would be aghast to learn that the city and county staff would be directing when we will get bike lanes, when we will get sidewalks repaired, when we will get this kind of transportation system at their discretion. When they feel like it, 10 years from now, who knows what influences their decisions. I hope my elected officials that I elected to represent me, and I'm paying their salaries, I hope you guys are the ones who are in charge and can help give direction so that this measure is very specific and clear about what is to be expected to be done and when in regards to complete streets and safety and accessibility and delivery of this vision that we've shared. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Allison McLeod, followed by Betsy Whelan. Hi.
Hello, I'm Allison McLeod. I'm here on behalf of the ACE Commuter Rail Agency that's planning to extend new service into Sacramento County. We wanted to thank this board for your work to craft a transportation expenditure plan that provides a host of benefits to diverse communities and diverse travelers in this region. There's no doubt that our county is growing, and we need to invest in an infrastructure network that includes better quality roads, modernized transit vehicles, more points of connectivity, increased transit service, and active transportation options. We believe your proposed TEP meets those goals. Particularly with the ACE commuter rail service, having access to STA funds provides leverage to tap into additional funding sources from other nearby counties and federal grants. A minor investment in local match dollars by STA represents a huge bang for the buck when it comes to commuter rail. Similarly, the county must be ready to compete for other state and federal transit and road grants with local match dollars. Otherwise, Sacramento is leaving potential money on the table. That's why reaching consensus and moving forward with a TEP and sales tax measure on this upcoming November ballot is so essential. We encourage you to finalize the plan and move forward with next steps for putting it before voters. The local governments, agencies, and interests that are represented in the plan should now work together and work hard to educate the community how it will benefit in many different ways. Overall, we believe the proposed expenditure plan represents a comprehensive transportation vision for the future, one that is balanced and worth supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Director Hume and I are anxiously awaiting your arrival into Elk Grove, too. Thank you. Betsy Whelan, followed by Annette Emery.
Is the overhead on?
Okay.
Oops, wrong side. Okay, we'll sit down.
Nice.
Am I technologically challenged or what? RT, no one's consulting me about smart technology or anything on roads, so don't worry about that.
Is that
okay, no, so I want to put, I want this language to appear.
This reminds me of high school. Okay.
Okay. So my name is Betsy Weiland, and I'm here today, hi, good afternoon, representing Save the American River Association, and I put up on the board for you an original Measure A renewal flyer that went out, and the language in that flyer, American River Parkway Bikeway Network Improvement Program. So on first blush, $63 million for the American River Parkway sounds great. But I think what Parkway advocates are going to have to weigh is $1 million guaranteed every year that's spent directly on repair, maintenance, and capital improvements. A trade-off for $63 million that at this point feels rather amorphous. We've done a great We've done a great job these past years, the County Regional Parks Department has, with working with stakeholders to prioritize projects that the community feels needs to get done on the parkway. We have an enviable system right now. It's the envy of, I can guarantee you, because I hear all the time from the state parks portion of the bike trail, about, gosh, there's a real distinct difference when you leave the county and enter the state parks. And that's not to criticize state parks, because they have all the issues we have funding-wise. So I'd like to know this $63 million, right now we have it so controlled and things get done and people can see the improvements. Who's going to administer the $63 million? How are we going to prioritize the projects? How do the stakeholders stay engaged? Our county is the manager operator of the parkway, regional parks. So those are my comments right at this moment. Thank you very much.
Betsy, just before you go, I'm going to, Director Stringer, I think, wants to address your comment.
Well, it's okay, Betsy, you can sit down. I was going to actually tee it up for Mr. Kempton to answer the question. I know the answer. I think the other board members do, but I think it's an important question that deserves a clear answer.
Thank you, Director Zerna. So I don't think Sarah and others will be upset with this particular process. It's going to be the same process that exists today. Out of the existing measure program, $1 million a year goes to the American River Parkway, and it goes to the county through the Department of Parks, Regional Parks. These dollars would be distributed in the same way, and that's included in the expenditure plan. They would be, when the measure goes into effect, there would be an additional $1 million provided through the end of the existing measure, and at that point it would increase to $2 million. So if this measure is successful, from April 1st of 2021, there will be $2 million going to the American River Parkway through March 31st of 2061.
So just to put a bow on that, so fair to say then, Will, that it's not just a continuation of the same order of magnitude, same amount, but it's a doubling at a certain point in time, and it's administered by the same agency as it has been. In fact, the same agency that was on your logo, Betsy, that you threw up there in your last overhead. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we leave this point, I was going to save this for last, but since we're on the subject, well, when we come back for the next meeting for final consideration, I'd like you to, you've gone over the high points of the plan very well, but I'd like you to talk about the transformative system improvements, specifically as pertains to pedestrian master plans, trails, bike paths, a lot of the things that are in this plan right now that folks may not be aware of, and is specifically called out in every single local jurisdiction in here. So I think it'd be worth spending some time on that, because I don't feel like we're as far apart as some may feel, even though we may have disagreements on splits, but I think what we're driving at is very, very similar between the plan and what we've heard thus far. So anyway, and then we can review what Director Sterner talked about, American River Parkway and others. Okay. Next speaker I have is Annette Emery, followed by, apologize for this, I think it's Lori Littman. Thank you. Hi. I'm sorry, you're Annette, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just getting next person on deck type of thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Annette Emery, and I live in the Garland Northgate neighborhood in South Natomas in Sacramento. And we are a very traffic busy neighborhood. And you look around going, well, why aren't more people just walking to the store or trying to catch the bus or bicycling? And the reality is everybody's afraid to cross the street because the traffic is so aggressive. It's sort of everything goes into putting money into making sure cars can run smoothly, but that makes pedestrians and bicyclists go, heck no. I have a kid that was hit by a car and just scratches and bruises. It's, you know, something to put on his resume. But, you know, these are the sort of things that happen. On top of just being a neighborhood advocate, I used to be a senior transportation planner in the Division of Mass Transportation at Caltrans. I don't know how many decades I've heard about we need to put more money into transit, into bicycling. I remember when Federal Transit Administration first proposed this, and these were fighting words. And it never really gets there because people are stuck in their ways, and the only ways you're going to get people not stuck in their ways, they need to be kicked in the butt by seeing all of a sudden there are alternatives to getting in my car. And I can do this, and I can do it affordably, and I can do it safely, and I can feel like this is something that will really, that helps my life. I used to always take the bus when I worked downtown. I read the newspaper, I read novels, talked to people. It was a good way to spend my time. But we need to go and make sure that money is going to into the projects. SACRT is doing some really interesting things, but we need to make sure money's going to areas that will have people say, you know what, I can do this. Let's look at the 50-50. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up. Did I say it correctly? Is it Lori?
Lori Littman.
Lori Littman, and next followed by Doug Thompson. Sorry about that. Hi.
I'm Lori Littman. I'm with 350 Sacramento, and I want to say that I am really frustrated right now. You guys are letting us each speak for 2 minutes. The public is very engaged. We're all saying we don't want cars, we want alternatives, and then you give us same old, same old. What is missing here is a vision. You're talking about a wish list of pet projects, many of them cars that are totally, roads that are totally unnecessary if you had a vision for helping us move off of this way that is destroying the earth. You all know that climate change is a big problem, and we have about 10 years to make a huge turnaround, and yet there's this disconnect. You're talking about building roads. The Mayor's Commission came up with a really good idea. They have plans to take 60% of car trips off the road by 2030. If we do that, we don't need new roads. We don't need new highways. We don't need the connectors. In fact, there will be space to make parks and things out of what is now roads. Right now, you're locking in 40 years of more carbon in our atmosphere. In 40 years, we may not even exist. There's a threat of extinction. And I am frustrated. That's a nice way of putting it. I am really frustrated with where this is going. I think you have to step back and go back to the drawing board and look at a big vision of how you can move our region to carbon zero in 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Thompson, followed by Deborah Banks.
Good afternoon. So I just wanted to consider what circumstances we'll face in the out year of this set of projects, 2060. And science tells us we can expect extreme heat to become more common in the summer months. In the cooler months, higher risk of flooding because storms will pack more rain, which will give us relief from the drought years, but will also be threatened by saltwater intrusion in the delta. So in short, our way of life will be at least different. The transportation decisions that you place before voters have bearing on how different. So we can choose a path that contributes to accelerating those impacts. Adding and widening roads grows VMT, or we as a county can choose a path that helps to mitigate the impacts of climate change, as well as the urban heat island impacts of adding pavement. I realize the path of mitigation requires a shift in thinking about how we grow, how we serve the needs of mobility. It requires funding a transit system with more convenience, shorter headways, lower costs, safe walk and bike access. It requires funding transportation alternatives at shares like we see in the other major urbanized areas of California. I'm not going to dwell on the alternative path, as I've been asked to read a letter from Sacramento Area Congregations Together. Sacramento ACT is a multicultural, multi-faith grassroots organization. Our members include over 56 congregations, schools, and neighborhood groups representing 60,000 families in Sacramento County. Dear Sacramento Transportation Authority board members, for the last 29 years, Sacramento ACT leaders have worked to make Sacramento a community where all families can thrive. Transportation is fundamental to working families in our region. Transportation is key to people's ability to pursue education, good-paying jobs, health care, and economic advancement. The STA Board of Directors should prioritize a transportation system that is clean and green, affordable, safe, and provides efficient transportation options. A transportation plan with these priorities, as advanced by SMART and SAC Moves, will deliver desirable benefits to working families in our region, such as a seamless transportation network, reducing air pollution in the neighborhood, saving households thousands of dollars annually, making walking, biking, and using public transit safe and convenient, making our streets safe for all users. Sacramento ACT strongly supports the plan submitted by SAC Moves. We encourage adoption of a forward-looking transportation plan that provides for the unique transportation needs and concerns of working families in Sacramento. Sincerely, Gabby Trejo, Executive Director. So on behalf of Gabby and me, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Deborah Banks, followed by Frank Tieran.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Deb Banks, and I'm the Executive Director of SABA, the Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates. We're a member of the SAC Moves SMART Coalition as well. It's hot out there today. Hasn't rained in a long time. A few meetings ago, Directors Corliss and Ayala from the Air Quality Board came and had a presentation with you, and one of the takeaways of that they said was that at most, one of the things you could easily do was to make active transportation, cycling and walking, a high priority. It's not a very expensive way to go, but it certainly will help people get out of their cars and help with Lori's frustration, which is a good thing. We need to make our streets safe and complete, as Chris mentioned and explained, so that everyone can safely navigate them. And I have a personal experience with this. A number of years ago, I was hit by a car, more than cuts and bruises. Car was going 40 plus miles an hour, and if you know anything about those statistics, not many people survive being hit by a car at 40 plus miles an hour. I'm lucky that I did, and it was life-changing and expensive, might I also add. 3 years of physical therapy, wheelchairs, crutches, learning how to walk again. I can now stand before you and encourage you to work on making our streets safe, making them complete, so that the kinds of injuries that I sustained won't happen to anyone else again. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm glad you bounced back. Frank Tieran, followed by Mary Topple.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a concerned citizen living in Rosemont, and I'm here because I don't think that 40% is enough. We need to do more when it comes to public transportation. I commute to Carmichael every day, and I don't want to take my car. I really don't. If I could just leave it at home and take public transit, I would. I've tried to plan my route, and I would have to take 3 different buses. It would take me more than an hour just to get to work, so we need to figure out a better system. I've tried to walk to the store, and there's parts of the road where there's no sidewalk, so I'm afraid about getting hit by a car. You know, I went to Amsterdam recently, and they have a great setup with, you know, a lane for pedestrians, a lane for bicyclists, and of course for the cars. You don't really see cars much because everything is so well figured out. So let's please really, you know, think about it. Think about the allocation of funds, and distributing that appropriately. We don't need more cars. It's contributing to, greenhouse gas emissions, making the air unfit to breathe, and making people like myself mad as hell. You have people out there who are taking risky behaviors on the road, which is a threat to public safety. Think about your morning commute. Everybody in this room should think about your morning commute. How many times have you been cut off by a driver because you refuse to go above the speed limit? Or people tailgating you. It's ridiculous. It's like Mad Max on the road. So let's please think about that, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mary Topple, followed by Inga Olson.
Yeah, it's Mary Tapple, and thank you, directors, for this opportunity to address you. I'm one of those Parkway advocates who's very grateful that there will be more spelled out funding annually for the American River Parkway. That long paved trail is not only a commuter route for many people, but it's essential for lots of health, including mental health, including all sorts of health. And I would also like to say I'm very, very impressed with the speakers who spoke about how, of course, we have to address climate change, particularly for our young people. It's not acceptable that we don't look to lower our vehicle miles driven down to so we can get to net zero carbon. We're in an area with very bad air pollution, and our basin is not going to change physically. We are the ones who have to change in how we we need to emphasize more mass transit, more safe bikeways. I've been afraid to bicycle lots of places. We have horrible crashes that bicyclists suffer when they're hit by vehicles. At my workplace, which is the California Environmental Protection Agency headquarters, this building is downtown, but just in our state water board, the bicycle crash trophy, some people were relating intensely horrible accidents like you just heard, where they have to have physical therapy and nearly get killed because they're hit by drivers of vehicles. So we need more safe bicycle routes all over the city, and we need to emphasize more mass transit because we have to reduce the carbon footprint. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Inga Olson, followed by Joanne Fuller. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The special bus line bus lane at Watt Avenue, the $1.5 million investment is not being used. And it's no wonder that people are not using public transit. The Measure A survey company that you all contracted with, I'm wondering about the staff, if the staff reflects your composition versus the composition of Glenn and his friends, because all across America and all across Sacramento Valley, polls are showing that people's chief concern, majorities of people's concern, is climate change. And they ask young Republicans, young Democrats, it looks the same in terms of their responses, rural and city. About a month ago, the city of Sacramento passed an emergency climate declaration, but in your proposal, it doesn't reflect that we're in an emergency in terms of climate in the world. The last measure, I didn't vote for it because it didn't have enough public transit. I'm going to wait and see what SAC Moves and SMART, what they're able to negotiate with you before I determine my vote, but whatever they recommend, I'm going to advocate for all the climate activists that I'm connected with to either vote for or vote against. So I'm really hoping that you will make some significant changes in your proposal. Thanks.
Thank you. Joanne Fuller, hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Joanne Fuller. I live in Director Peters' district. I'm here as one of the 14% of people, thank you, 14% of people in the county who are over 65. I'm well over 65. And I'm really asking you, as most of us, I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income, and I am going to need to go out and get to the doctor and shop and maybe go somewhere to have some fun. But very soon, you're not going to want to see me driving. And I have some friends that also should not be driving as we get older. But what are we going to do? It seems like you all are condemning us to breathe bad air, that you're asking us to walk on dangerous, unsafe streets, that you're keeping us from a legacy where we can be proud of reducing greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled. Instead, I'm asking on behalf of the 14% of people in the county over 65 that you prioritize some public transportation for us and better and safer streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Kelly Cohen, followed by Elise Fandrich.
Hello.
Hello.
Kelly Cohen from Sacramento County.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the Parkway, but I see that you have it well in mind. Phil Cerna has been a very good watchdog for the Parkway, and I appreciate that. Just want to make sure that the funding goes in there, as others have said. I also had something else that came to my mind, and that is that sales taxes keep going up. And there seems to be a possible environmental justice issue related to that because it affects low-income seniors and disabled greater than the average population. Everybody has to buy things, and so the increased tax affects them more than others. At some point, and there are also other funding needs that turn to increasing the sales taxes besides transportation. And at some point, it will get to where you really can't raise them anymore. They're just like outraised. So where will the funding come from? I've wondered, how do other states fund their state transportation? Just something that I was thinking about related to that. Also, that we all know that seniors are the greatest number, in other words, increasing. And with being a senior also comes disability. And as some other people have talked about, having increased transportation options for them is going to be needed. I don't know how far out into the future. I mean, when you look at what the needs are, they're going to be increasing. And then there's technological and medical advances which make it easier for senior and disabled people to get out and have inclusion in activities in society. So I wanted to bring that forward in addition to the American River Parkway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Next up, Elise Fandrich, followed by Chris Brown. Oh, hi, Elise.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking all this time to take public comment. We appreciate it. So I want to thank the board for their work, and I want to echo a lot of the concerns that have already been raised here regarding the current funding allocation for transit and that impact on air quality, safety, and access. I want to highlight my personal concerns because the proposed DEP will fall short, I believe, of meeting state and city goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So, we have a limited time frame, as others have mentioned, to dramatically reduce emissions in this region. And this board, I think, has a duty to really closely scrutinize how every single dollar is spent on these transportation projects to ensure that we're accomplishing the dual goals of increasing mobility for all of our regional residents, as well as reducing the impact of climate change on this region. So, when we invest in transit, in bike infrastructure, in pedestrian infrastructure, I really believe we are investing in improving the quality of life for our residents, all of our residents. I have lived in a city with excellent transit and excellent safe bike lanes, and I'll tell you, I was a first-time commuter, and commuting on my bike was the best part of my day. It was the best part of my day. And I really think, I like the idea that we need to be thinking about a vision for how we can not just curb climate change and avoid all these terrible things, but also really create a positive future for our residents. And when you create those safe streets, when you invest in transit, I believe you do that. You get fewer people commuting downtown. It means that the people who have to commute from Elk Grove, who have to commute from Rancho, who have to commute from El Dorado, they have more access because the cars that I would drive from East Sacramento downtown, I'm not going to use them because I'll take a rail or I'll take my bike. So I really think it's important to think about it in that lens, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Brown, followed by Lynn Wheat.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Brown, live over in Oak Park, and member of the Sacramento Climate Coalition. I guess the best option on the table today is the one being proposed by the two groups, SACMUS and the Smart Coalition. And so I'll support that. But quite frankly, like others who've spoken to you today, I'm frustrated because we've just watched more than 1 billion animals lose their lives in Australia. Brush fires that burned an area the size of Korea. In 3 months, they've emitted all the carbon that they would emit from transportation in 1 year. This is climate change happening now. We have 102 million dead trees in the Sierra Nevada that are just waiting for the wrong spark. And we are at the beginning of another drought year. Now, your decision in front of you is focused on a very narrow part of the solution, but it can only be part of the solution if it moves us away from gas and fossil fuel powered vehicles and moves us into a world where we're not putting more carbon in the atmosphere, because we're getting it from the existing climate change catastrophes that are going to keep happening until humans change our behavior and have a vision of ourselves cooperating with the planet we live on in order to put carbon back in the ground and quit emitting it. Now, the 50-50 isn't that full vision, but it's a lot better than 60-40. And I know, like Inga said, there'll be a lot of people who won't vote for this if it's 60-40. And you have a high bar to leap at 67% of the vote. Remember that to inspire people to get out and vote for you, it has to be something they want.
Thank you. Next speaker, Lynn Wheat, followed by Jennifer Wood. We have an actual Elk Grovian in the audience. I'm very proud of that.
Yes, Lynn Wheat
Thank you.
from suburban sprawl Elk Grove. I have been advocating for public transportation and in particular light rail since we became a city, because I thought that was the direction that we really needed to go, looking at what was going on with the traffic. And so I'm still trying to advocate for that. And interestingly enough, I went to a meeting last night, and our city's hired a consultant from LA to rethink our SEPA area that was to be our employment center. So he put some nice schematics up, and one of the schematics showed light rail going down onto Camera Road. Well, he was really preaching to the choir about what we needed to have done, because I've been speaking to it. So I finally raised my hand and I asked the question, and I said, have you talked to anybody? Because I went to those early JPA meetings hoping that our connector was going to have a space for light rail, a separate bike lane, and some other things. And that was not included in this expressway that is so signalized, it just speaks of sprawl. history repeating itself. Do we really want to become LA? So I'd like to suggest, you've heard, there's a lot of old people living in this county, and there's a lot of young people living in this county, and a lot of them are voters, and they're not interested in new roads and more traffic. They're interested in other means of getting around. So if you really want this to pass, I think that you need to do the will of the people and not the will of some special interest groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Next up, Jennifer Wood. That's actually my last speaker. If there's any more who would like to come up, please let me know.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members. My name's Jennifer Wood, and I'm a resident of the city and a volunteer with Sacramento Chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And of course, we're concerned about climate risk to our economy, to our health, to our prosperity. And I'm here to support the SAC Move Smart Coalition proposals. I mean, it's the bare minimum, you know. We'd probably definitely would like to see more transit, more walkable, livable community funding. But this would be the bare minimum that I personally would support, really, to create a resilient and livable transportation in the future. And you guys are the critical decision makers here, you know, and you have a chance to leave a more visionary legacy. I know there's a concern that folks in the outlying areas, you know, they have to get around with cars and they don't want the congestion, but it's kind of a chicken and egg sort of thing. You know, if we continue to build communities and let them sprawl out so that people have to use their cars, then we're just continually stuck in this circle. So if we can create more infill, more livable, walkable communities, even in the outlying areas, revitalize those. I think the first precept of the SAC moves is the fix it first. And I know that takes a lot of money, and I know it takes a lot of infrastructure changes, and that's really tough, but that's what we have to do. And I think, as a lot of people have said, that's the kind of world that most of us, a lot of us, want to live in, where we can walk, we can bike, we can take the train, we don't have to be sitting in our cars. And there's a lot of great transportation options that are available for us to build out, and also be ready for future technologies, the electric cars and the electric charging stations and the better rail. So I really encourage you to consider the SAC Moves Coalition proposal, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's the last speaker I had. We're not taking action on this today. I want to bring it back to the dais for any comments from my colleagues up here. Okay, seeing none, before we go to next steps, I just also, on behalf of this board, want to thank all of you for your engagement and coming out again. Okay, Director Hanson. Oh, actually, I see Director Frost is up here.
Okay, I just wanted, a couple meetings ago, we had the conversation around the Public Utilities Commission and whether or not we could write that PUC 180203 or 207 out of the ordinance, and if we did write it out, would we still operate under the PUC? So I wanted to come back and just get some clarification. I did have a conversation with Will. Thank you for following up on it. I just wanted to get some clarification from council regarding if we did write it out of the ordinance or exclude it from the ordinance, and I noticed it was still in, would we still operate under the PUC, and would it still apply technically to our ordinance?
So there's a provision in your governing statute that allows
your mic.
This authority.
No.
Try again. This authority. All right. There's a provision in your governing statute that allows this authority to make annual amendments to the expenditure plan under certain circumstances, if there are additional unexpected revenues, or if there are, the terminology is unforeseen circumstances. That is an option the state law gives you. So yes, the board could elect to waive that option and only choose to do an amendment or consider an amendment every 10 years, which is what the ordinance calls for. As we discussed a couple meetings ago, I'd recommend that you don't do that. I think the board's going to want the flexibility to consider change circumstances on an annual basis. That's my advice, but yes, it can be done.
Okay, so that, I thought that was on the table. We were going to discuss whether or not we could write it out. So what you're saying is, no, really, we cannot.
I'm saying you can. I'm saying you should not.
Oh, you're saying we can write it out of this ordinance?
You can
and if
elect
we-
not to do annual or consider annual
No,
amendments.
but it would be, no, that's not, I'm not asking if we can elect to do annual changes to the expenditure plan. I'm asking if we exclude it from the ordinance, does it write it out of the 40-year ordinance, and then it's no longer an option?
I think we're kind of saying the same thing here.
So it is always going to be an option, either way.
No, in this ordinance, you can include language that says, we shall not exercise the option to amend this on an annual basis. We shall only
Oh, we
consider
can say that.
amendments every 10 years. You can do that.
Okay, but with the way it's specifically worded at this time, it's still in there as an except.
In the draft,
It's an exception.
in the draft materials that were sent a few days ago, yes, it still references
I brought it
that
up 2
provision and
meetings
allows
ago.
for
It's-
annual.
Okay, so we are not excluding it then, at this point in time?
We are prepared to do whatever the board would like to do with respect to that issue.
Was that part of the conversation at the ad hoc, or, I mean, because for me, that's a consideration. It's a matter of, the questions we asked on the polling. Is it important to you to have the money go the way you thought it was going to go? It's a matter of trust with my constituents. So the question is, did they discuss it because they didn't take it out? I guess that's the question.
I don't remember that it's been explicitly discussed, but I believe there has been a lot of references to the fact that that members of our board want to restrict the amendment process. And we've got a 10-year process that's built into the plan, which I think, if I were to offer an opinion, would be the view of the majority of this board.
Okay, and it's also, the exemption, with the exception of the PUC is also written into this.
Yes, it's a very simple process to take that out.
Oh, I see, okay. So it's not taken out yet, but it can be. Okay, thank you.
Council, I just want to ask a question to Director Frost's point. If we took that out, that also would not allow us to adjust for changes in technology and those kinds of things. We could only make changes every 10 years under the current.
Correct.
language.
You would be bound to the distributions, the allocations that are set in the adopted plan for 10 years.
And that's the risk, Director Frost, of removing it, because we can't predict the future, and that would be a risk. So it's something that I'm happy to take up at the ad hoc again, but just so you know that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah, I know. I get, I understand the need for flexibility, every 10 years or so. I think what I am concerned about is public trust and the fact that, we have this situation where the public would like to see that they got what they thought they were going to get, and that it's not going to be redirected or used in some different way. And so I'm trying to clarify what is what are the legal boundaries, so that we can at least tell them what to expect, and they can get what they're expecting.
Yeah, I appreciate your very valid concern.
And
Yeah.
I'm, to determine if it's something I can support based on what my constituents want to see. That's all.
Thank you. I understand.
Thank you.
Director, I'm sorry, Director Hansen. Sorry, Director Cerna. Director Hansen, yours doesn't pop up.
Yeah, my screen's not working. Thank you, everyone. I do favor the way that piece of the ordinance is right now because of the changing nature. 10 years doesn't seem like a long time, but it is a long time. So I just want to say that. Going back to what SMART and SAC Moves have been talking about, I know I asked our Executive Director, Kempton, some of those questions, but one of the things I might just say to the board, and Mr. Chair, if the ad hoc is going to meet again, that's something I'm curious about since I'm not on the ad hoc. But if Measure A, which was created in 2004, and passed in 2004 but took effect in 2009, passed by such a large margin and is so well loved here. I don't know why we don't just replicate those percentages and categories which were so successful before. And I think that's part of what SAC Moves is trying to ask us. They didn't quite say it exactly like that. Why not, continue the magic of those splits and that community support? Measure A has been with us for so long, and now if we have a Measure A, whatever we're calling it, or A plus.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess it's kind of a rhetorical question because the ad hoc the subcommittee has come to this determination. But I do think that we have to have a really good answer for that question. And I don't know that yet we have a very good answer to that question. There is a different world we live in right now.
Yes.
Than was in 2004.
Yes.
Different cities exist now that didn't exist before.
Yes.
Different priorities maybe. But I still continue to think that Measure A had a certain magic to it. And if we're trying to recreate that magic, we should follow the same formula.
Well,
so if the ad hoc or the subcommittee is going to meet again, I think that's something to consider.
We do have one more meeting to discuss some of the details of the ordinance, Director Hansen, but I would say we've gone down that path respectfully, and with that full consideration of previous Measure A, failure of Measure B, new electorate, new cities, post SB1, all of those things, and that's where I would hesitate revisiting it at this point. But not to say that we can't be informed by comments here today and further conversation. Director Cerna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, I'd like to thank everyone that addressed the board here this afternoon. A lot of busy people. understand that this is not easy for many of you to take time out of your schedules to be here. And I also want to thank the folks that have inundated our inboxes in the last few days, last few weeks, with not necessarily just a form communique. In many cases, it's very similar, but I think there's also something to be said for how those emails have been structured to convey to authority members your own personal take on what it means to be a cyclist and have to rely on bicycle infrastructure to get to and from your place of work, what it's like to be transit dependent, and what's important to you in that regard. So I just wanted to make sure that it was recognized by someone up here today that we take very seriously all of those emails, and your advocacy overall is impressive. I think at some point, as the chair mentioned, we're not taking a vote today, but at some point, we're at least going to have to begin to coalesce around where we are individually and collectively on the subject of the distribution. And you've heard from me and you've heard from others what our priorities are. And my priorities have been consistent. Nothing has really changed for me. I'm glad to see we've made progress on the American River Parkway. But for me, should it be the will of this governing body to make adjustments to the split, the allocation, the 60-40 that's been mentioned many times here today, and if there's enough gravity to do that, certainly air quality and the effects of air quality and greenhouse gas emissions on climate change is something that continues to resonate with this board member. And I'll be part of a collection of board members that would look to continue to push the envelope. Having said that, if it is not the will of the board to go that direction, and there is a stronger movement up here to not mess too much with the allocation because there's concerns about whether or not the electorate is ready to support something like a 50-50 or something greater than what's being proposed now, I am not about to abandon this effort. I think it's much too important to say all or nothing from almost any standpoint. And this is the pain of doing something like this. We have to kind of continually vet what this looks like in terms of the expenditure plan, what it looks like in terms of the split. That's not easy. I understand the frustrations by some. I disagree with some of the characterizations by some about what really is driving some of us or us as a governing body. But I certainly am hoping that we get to a place where we can all agree that it doesn't mean everything to all of us. It doesn't have everything that we'd want, but the greater good of the measure outweighs the fact that we're not getting everything that we want, and that we all find that this is an initiative, a measure that we can and should support for all the right reasons, to fix our roads, to make sure that we're going to continue to have resources available for transit and active transportation, to do things like improve the parkway. So I just want to make kind of very clear today, even though we're not taking a vote, what my perspective is, and the fact that you continue to advocate the way you have, and I'm speaking directly to SMART and SAC Moves. Please continue to do so. I think it's effective, and I appreciate it for one. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Guerra.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I, too, like Supervisor Cerna here, agree that the goals, at least for this board members, are pretty clear. And number one, first and foremost, is the public health and the real threat of climate change and the quality of life of people who live in the greater Sacramento region. Also, not to forget that mobility and intermittent and intermixed with the issue of housing is, I think, a threat to our regional economy too. If we don't address mobility, congestion, and those issues, I think we will, as someone mentioned, end up with the challenges that LA has with goods movement, quality of life, and those issues. But to do nothing, I think, is also not an option. I think that hurts all of us. So I agree with the comments of some of my colleagues here, Board Member Cerna, that we must coalesce over something that I think addresses those clear issues. I want to thank staff for a lot of this great work putting this together, and my colleagues who have, I think, been getting us to this point. I'm happy to see that there's additional money or the conversation of the proposed application of additional revenues for the Air District. If we are not using our regional body that works with all of our cities and incorporated parts of the county to leverage dollars from the federal government to help us study and make changes, and that entity that's purely focused on the public health is not well funded, then I think we're all going to hurt in that situation. Also, thank you for the work of the Mobility Center. I think that making sure that we're planning for the future and understanding that technology will change is critical. If the dreams and aspirations of my colleague Councilmember Harris and having zero emission or electric aviation comes to fruition soon, then we maybe you're thinking really hard about our freeways. But that goes to the point of flexibility. I also appreciate the fact that we need to have flexibility once there is this harder push and drive for changes in technology. As the ad hoc meets and gets together, I think there are a couple things that I'd like to see. Obviously, a focus on air quality is critical, but I'd like to see some stronger language on complete streets and Vision Zero. Fix it first. I mean, I drive down my neighborhood streets, and the number of potholes are dramatic. But we should be thinking about how do we fix those streets that may need to be completely ripped out, and thinking about them in a safety and also a way that addresses those goals of air quality and congestion reduction, VMT reduction in those. When I worked for a carpenter for a couple of years in high school, they told me to measure twice but cut once. So let's figure out how to do that and not repave and replan. The other piece I'd like to also see is some stronger language around how we can reduce VMT and greenhouse gas reduction. I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're meeting our air quality goals and targets for federal attainment. And, you know, in my other hat as the chair of the Air District, I see where our challenges are on those attainment goals, and at least on PM, we're barely meeting them, but we're still in great risk in other components of that. With that, Mr. Chair, I think those are my thoughts on the work that needs to move forward, and I'd like to see us coalesce against something that addresses those principal air quality concerns.
Thank you, Director Guerra. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I want to point out, and we talk about percentages between roads and transit, Our road allocation for Citrus Heights isn't just about painting the streets black, putting asphalt down. It pays for Smart Ride to cover our city where buses can't cover. It pays for bus rapid transit because we're not going to get light rail anytime soon. We have a major project coming up that's a bike ped trail down. We call it the Electric Greenway, which is a really cool name, but it follows the SMUD transmission lines through the center of our city, and I think it's about 7 miles. And also complete streets. I mean, the next one to come is Old Auburn Boulevard. Has no sidewalks. It's ditches on the side, and it'll include, we have a study session tomorrow night on this, dedicated bike lane and pedestrian separation from the road. One thing I do want to point out, and thank you everybody for your comments and my fellow board members, I want to point out that STA is a fiscal administrator. We're not a policy board. And so I think that's up to our individual jurisdictions to adopt guiding principles and policies based on our community. And to have this come from STA with strings attached is a little tough for me to swallow. We talk about leveraging our money. Our staff does a great job doing that. We wouldn't do a project any other way if we couldn't cobble together state, federal, and local matches to the money we have. It's how we stretch things and make them go further. So one of the last things I did want to say, I don't need an argument about climate change. It's just we shouldn't pollute. And yes, gas-powered vehicles are one of the primary polluters. We've made great headways. Someday soon, hopefully, we'll have electric or hydrogen or whatever. We might not even be able to imagine what will be, but we'll still need roads. And we'll need roads for the buses too. One of the things with some of the previous Measure A and the current Measure A renewal is it really didn't address our needs for roads. We didn't fix anything. We haven't got any money for that. We did get more transit, which is cool. So, and to say that you're going to argue over a split, and I'm going to vote no because transit's only getting $3.2 billion. That's really cutting off your nose to spite your face. So I hope we can all compromise and settle on a final ordinance and move forward on this. So, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Director Peters.
Thank you. I just want to say we may at ad hoc make a few small changes, but I think this is $8 billion that we won't have if we don't pass this. So, 40% or 50% of nothing is nothing, and I think we all need to work together to do that for public safety. I mean, I have people stop me about bicycles falling in potholes and they break their knee. They're terrified to walk in the street, and this is going to put bike lanes in. It's going to put sidewalks in. It allows for street lights to be put in, which is very important in the unincorporated area. A more ethereal comment would be it could affect our economy. When we are looking to companies to move here with good paying jobs for all, they want their people to be able to get to work and not need a four-wheel drive to get out of the potholes. The director of RT, Henry Lee, was here last time we met, and he testified in favor of this. So, he's the lead champion of the public transit portion. So that tells me a lot. And as to the PUC paragraph, I really think the public doesn't wish to, no offense to everyone on this board, they don't want a lot of politicians having an annual option to change the measure. So I would be not in favor of leaving that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few comments and then offer a couple of thoughts. One being, you asked, Mr. Chair, for the next time around that Mr. Kempton give a presentation with some more background. I'd ask and recognize maybe as part of the sausage making part of this, that the ad hoc committee is taking up a lot of these things. Those of us that read both the staff report, hear the testimony here, get the written commentary, don't have the benefit of, some of those discussions. I think you responded on behalf of, some of the work that's been done there. I think it would be helpful, ad hoc committee or not, to at least have some report out, because as we sit here 3 weeks from now and try to go through that as this entire body, we had the benefit of certainly that being vetted in the recommendations, but I would offer that as a suggestion, so we at least have the benefit of what was discussed and why certain things may have been in or out, and I don't expect it, extensive, but I just think it would be useful for those of us who hear the testimony, read the letters, and, again, and certainly, are, grateful for our colleagues who are willing to serve in that capacity. I just think it would be helpful. So I would offer that as some additional information as we're beginning to actually, begin to, try to pull consensus together around this. So
I think it'd be appropriate.
Okay. Also, just as to the flexibility, certainly, what's in or out as it relates to touchback. I do think, though, as we talk about, what the vision may be as we sit here today, and as this would go before the voters, assuming we come together and put it on the ballot in November. I think having flexibility for those that will succeed, all of us, is important, but also keeping, that level of accountability with the voters at the time in which it was brought before them, and again, if it wins the support, keeping faith with that, but also I think allowing, for those developments, whether it be technological or certainly demand and or legislative requirements and or public health issues. And so, again, that's, something obviously we're going to talk about at the next meeting, but I do think having flexibility is optimum to those who are going to, be here over the long haul, all 40 years in carrying this out. I would just note, too, the correspondence. Thank you, all those who have written. I know that we've been, receiving quite a bit of commentary, and certainly Director Cerner referenced it, but I appreciate certainly the thoughtfulness. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also, I think, some real personal stories that I think help us in recognizing, I think, what at least those that are writing to us want. I do want to note, I would be interested, and I appreciate Mr. Kempton responding, but as it relates to TMAs, I think they have an important role in the overall carrying out of connectivity between employers and certainly residents and commuters, and building, I think, additional participation as it relates to everybody kind of doing their part. And so whether it's an off the top or it's, some ability to compete, there's a difference in all that. And so, again, just a heads up, I think I kind of signaled that today. I'd like to have some conversation as we come back to this dais in a few weeks. I guess the last comment I would just make, too, and again, I want to thank everybody who's worked on it thus far, is that, we tied a lot of this back to the polling, and that polling data is very important. It informs, obviously, some of the prioritization and the considerations that we've been talking about and working on now for many months. But that, and I think we all know this, that the only poll that really counts is the one on Election Day. And assuming it gets to the ballot and gets on the November ballot, if that's what we make, that, right now we have over 800,000 registered voters in this county. And if you had a 50% turnout, that would be 400,000 voters, if we can do the math. And you're going to need somewhere in the realm, assuming people get down ballot to this, 250 to 300,000, depending upon turnout, yes voters in order to get to 2/3. And that's significant. And I think when I hear comments and all the back and forth here that if there's not enough in here for a significant segment of the voters, that 2/3 looms very, very large. And so I think, certainly the responsibility we bear is to try to put together a measure that has, a balance to it. And I think there's been good work along those lines. But I would just hope we keep that in the back of our mind that, we've already heard comments, and again, it's the all or nothing. Obviously, people make their choices about whether this is viable or not. But I think it's going to be very important that if we get consensus at this board and that it's a clear majority, that we're prepared then obviously to do what comes after that and before our respective bodies, and obviously as we would head to November. So, at any rate, I thank the committee for its work, and certainly Will, you and your staff, and the others that worked on this. And I trust we're going to allow some sufficient time on the March date to, we have a longer meeting schedule. That was my last question. Is that have you allowed for 3 or 4 hours of discussion in these chambers?
It's a typical board meeting, but
I think you need to, yeah. I would just say that, if you hear the comments, you need to plan for that. I guess that's my suggestion, and I'm not getting anybody else's time here.
There is a later conflict for the use of the chambers on that date. we can work with the clerk's office to see if we can't do something to clear that, but...
Who is it, Will?
I don't remember who it is.
Okay, I just thought if it was library again,
But
library authority again, but
obviously, we'll need some
sufficient
time.
okay.
Thanks.
Yeah,
So we'll
Director
deal with
Tolan.
that.
Director Harris.
Thank you, Chair Soon. So I've participated on the subcommittee for the last year, and it's been a very interesting process to come up with a product that's reflective of many jurisdictions across the county, jurisdictions that see mobility in a different light and have different needs. Clearly, if you live far out in the county and there's absolutely no public transportation available to you, you look at this differently than a city dweller who can use light rail or choose to use a bus. I've said it many times that virtually all forms of transportation outside of rail require good quality roads. And our roads are deteriorating badly. You know, in the near term, in the next 10 years, there's no doubt we have to do an awful lot of road repairs. We can't change the mobility paradigm with this one measure. We can affect it, we can move a ball a little bit. This particular measure that we're bringing forward from the committee is so far superior to Measure B that both the process and the product are much better. You recall that that was more like a 70-30 split. And it almost passed. It was very close. There is clearly a huge appetite to solve this road conundrum, both in the city and the county. Our roads are deteriorating at a great rate. When we talk about infill, infill requires underground infrastructure, and that means tearing up roads, and that means a lot more money to repair the roads to support infill. You know, when you take all of these considerations into mind, I think that the product that the committee has come forth with is a compromise. It's definitely a compromise because of all these disparate needs throughout the county. I think we're very close myself. You know, I understand all the arguments of the advocates about climate change. It is crucial. It's, you know, we are at a real turning point. But I'd ask you to consider this. Changing the mobility paradigm requires policy and it requires technology. And both of those are evolving. I also agree with Director Miller that this may not be the place to change policy. Rather, more that would be to individual jurisdictions. But, you know, things are going to change dramatically, I think, in the next 5 years. I have a great interest in air because I'm a pilot, but Uber is absolutely developing drones for personal travel, and things are going to change a lot in the next 5 years. Electric vehicles are being adopted at an ever-increasing rate, which is great for air quality, it's great for greenhouse gas reduction, and it's not insignificant by any means. You know, I challenge every one of you to think how you would change your own lifestyle. Okay, if rail could get you everywhere, you'd be inclined to take rail. We need to make adjustments in that regard, but this measure, should it pass, will give a lot of money to RT, and as was mentioned, Henry Lee has made peace with it. You know, I also sit on the RT board, as do many of my colleagues, and we are changing RT. It's moving in a positive direction. If it doesn't get an infusion of money from Measure A, things will stall out. So trying to make a balance here, a bill that would pass, you know, that voters would actually accept, we have pushed it more in the direction of transit than Measure B, and I think that's a good thing. Could we push it farther and still get this past the voters? I think we're right at the cutting edge. That's my own opinion, based on the polling, based on talking to a lot of people, and based on dealing with my colleagues who have vocalized that if there wasn't more money for roads, they're out. They're not gonna try to even bring it to their council. There are some members here who are convinced that this thing will fail, and they're not supportive. As an elected body, we have to take all of these things into consideration. All in all, I think that, again, we're very close to something that can pass and really needs to pass. So I thank my colleagues for all of your comments. I think they were all astute. Director Cerna, I'm completely lockstep with you, and really virtually everything that was said today, I agree with. This is not an easy process, but I will say this. We did an awful lot of community outreach. That didn't happen with Measure B, not even a little bit. This has been a long process of listening, and yes, you know, personally, would I invest more in transit? I would. Am I concerned about climate change? I am. Do I think that this measure can solve a lot of those paradigms? No, I don't. But I think it's a very necessary thing for us to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Frost, did you still want to say something? Or you okay?
I can. Okay. I was just going to add that there were a lot of comments today from public comment. Appreciated everyone's input around climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, and if you build it, they'll come, and the need to really reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And I think the point I wanted to make is that, number one, and it was brought up by several people, that if this doesn't pass, no one gets anything. And no matter what happens, we still have to fix our roads. And it's not just about the constituents wanting the roads fixed to improve their, neighborhoods and their property values, but it's about public safety. And we're actually having situations where people are hitting potholes and having accidents and getting hurt. And so the roads are important. I also wanted to, I think it was Director Gatewood that mentioned about a dollar allocation versus percentages. And I think when you summarize the measure in terms of this project is going to get this amount, and it sounds like there's challenges that I'm not aware of, but versus the percentages, it kind of gives people a better idea of the big picture view of who's getting, where the money is going to and what they're voting for. And I think Director Hansen might have referred to that also. So that people can easily, and there was a business group that came up with a plan that actually allocated dollars to projects, and it said this is going to finish this project, so that people knew what they were getting and what they were voting for. I think that would resonate well with the public in helping them better understand what they're voting for.
Thank you. You didn't hear anybody on this dais talk about this being a perfect plan, and it's not a perfect plan, but it's a very good compromise that will move the needle. Move the needle, meaning it'll improve our transit system and air quality as we were discussing, but it'll also improve road maintenance in our respective communities, which will mean a lot to our voters. I come at you as someone who, when I was, Samuel's age, growing up in South Sacramento, had the luxury of being able to bike through Land Park and to get to Old Sacramento. I cherish those days. I'm jealous that I can't take transit and bicycles now, living in Elk Grove and having to go to Arden Arcade. So I definitely commute out of my area. And as a father with my own children, I also take stock in the world we're going to leave to them. I'm going to leave to them, my wife and I. And so I have great appreciation to everything that was said today. But I am also trying to balance what you've heard my colleagues articulate, and at least being able to speak at length with Henry Lee of RT, who will implement the very transit system, the improvements that everyone's focused on, knowing that he has there's enough in this expenditure plan that will move that needle. That gives me comfort. But we also have to look at the threshold of voters. So being able to pass a measure so that everybody can enjoy or take advantage of revenue to improve both systems is something we need to be very cognizant of. And so I appreciate all my colleagues' comments today. Like others have said, we all agree with everything that was said up here. There'll be more opportunity for comment and discussion at the next meeting. Will, if you wouldn't mind, Director Chenier talked about next steps. Could we go through that a little bit?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. After this meeting today on March 2nd, which is next Monday, we have a meeting of the Professional Advisory Group at which we will be hearing from the Smart SAC Moves group. And the Public Works Directors in particular will be discussing complete streets and some other issues relative to the suggested changes that have been proposed by that group. On March 5th, next Wednesday, is the next ad hoc committee meeting. Third, fourth, no, that's on Thursday. I'm sorry.
Thursday, yeah, Thursday. Sure. Correct. No, it's Thursday.
It's Thursday is the next ad hoc committee meeting, followed by another meeting on March 9th of the Professional Advisory Group, if needed, if necessary. We'll decide that on Monday. And then the regular meeting for March is March 12th. That's the board meeting at which you will be asked to adopt the tentative transportation expenditure plan. Tentative because it has to go through the Public Utilities Code process of all the cities and the Board of Supervisors. Then in April, we intend to introduce the ordinance, and in May, you would formally adopt the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Can we get those dates on the website so folks can refer to them or see them?
Okay, I think
when you get to have someone do that.
Most of them are, but we'll check that.
Okay, let's make sure. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Tricia? Or you go? Okay. All right. If there's no other further comments from the directors, I'm going to item 5, I think was on here. With that, I'm going to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.